Hi. So often we talk about reassurance seeking as a compulsion, whether it takes the form of Googling or asking your loved ones your burning questions, or perhaps reading articles to try to gain certainty and reduce your panic. But rarely do we cover the more sneaky or covert compulsions for OCD, like self-reassurance. And that's what I want to talk about today. So let's jump right in. Firstly, let's cover what a compulsion actually is. Well, a compulsion is an action you take either physically or mentally to reduce the uncomfortable sensations or internal experience associated with your OCD. For example, I used to struggle to leave my house, so I would engage in compulsions of filming myself locking the door and then watching it back to try to seek short-term relief. This should be avoided as it makes OCD worse in the long run. It wasn't helping me. But sneaky OCD compulsions are the more covert, close relatives to these more overt, visible and pronounced compulsions. And they often take the forms of mental acts that can sail under the radar when we're going about our day-to-day lives. They're not as easy for us to spot. Although they are not as easy to spot, they are equally unhelpful when looking to recover from OCD. Compulsions can often create the illusion of resolving anxiety in the short term, but this in fact actually strengthens an individual's belief in their feared scenario and increases their reliance on compulsions in general. These covert and sneaky compulsions are no different, and they too feed the OCD cycle, if left to their own devices. They can be frequently missed and overlooked. The term Pure O stands for pure obsessional OCD, with this form often presenting with less observable compulsions that can go unnoticed. So, what does self-reassurance look like, and how do we tackle it? Examples of self-reassuring statements can include, "I know it's not me because when I dealt with a similar thought the other day, it definitely was OCD. So it must be OCD now." Or, "I would never truly think that, so it must be OCD." Other examples may be, "I felt sure the other day, so that must mean it's true." Self-reassurance statements can even focus on somatic bodily sensations and overlap with self-checking behaviours. An example of this would be, "My body seems disgusted with this thought or feeling right now," which has to mean that it's not true. I remember the rise and fall of anxiety in my body when I used to do this myself. I would feel so heavy when I struggled to convince myself that things were okay. And then I would feel the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders when I had managed to convince myself my feared story was untrue. Now, the reality was, however, that this relief, it never lasted very long, and I would soon be back to my compulsions with a far greater intensity and urgency. If any of these sound like you, then most likely you're performing these covert compulsions. And there are many more examples of how this can look. Just want to take a quick time out to ask that if you're finding this video helpful, please subscribe and leave me a comment. It'll help it reach more people who could benefit. So how your compulsions present isn't important in order to break the cycle. What's more important is how we respond. It can feel so tempting to want to remove that difficult feeling or distressing thought, but these attempts to resist and neutralize do not serve us in long-term recovery. In fact, avoiding the discomfort intrusions can bring up can actually have the opposite effect to that we had intended to achieve. As the founder of analytical psychology, Carl Jung, once said, "What you resist persists, and there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion." What we can take from this is that leaning into, desensitizing, and working through our internal experiences is where growth and healing can occur. Pushing them down, however, is where we can become stuck and in a vicious cycle. So how do you lean into uncertainty to rewire the brain? One of the response techniques that can be extremely helpful is deliberate uncertainty. rather than statements that aim to reassure you, like, I felt certain before, so I know this must be OCD, or I would never do that because of X or Y. Using deliberate uncertainty works to teach your mind that the thoughts are not dangerous. Responses such as, maybe you're right, OCD. Then again, maybe you're not. We just can't be sure, so let's get back to our day, shall we? Can feel strange and disingenuous at first, but actually over time, we're rewiring the brain to stop noticing and flagging up your obsessions as being threats. To break it down further, if your behaviour and response to OCD are that of indifference or disinterest, the brain will start to label the thoughts as unimportant and as not needing further investigation, thus reducing them and the distress attached to them. In the short term, it can seem like a scary concept to not offer yourself reassurance, as this has become your default setting, and likely something that you've become quite reliant on. But over time, the more we lean into uncertainty, the more we desensitize and begin to master our fears. Stephen Hayes, the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, once said, "If you aren't willing to have it, you will." And by this he means that the energy and the focus on removing and avoiding that which we dislike, fear, or find uncomfortable actually makes it more likely for this thought, feeling, or idea to continue and pop up and intrude more frequently. Everyone is on a unique recovery journey, and it's important to not compare yourself and to go at a pace that works for you. These techniques are skills and practices that can be built upon and developed. If you're someone who struggles to sit with uncomfortable feelings, then I have a completely free anxiety release audio, which you can download from the link in the description below. Before we go, I have a quick question for you. Which area of OCD are you struggling with the most? Comment below and I'll be more likely to make a video about it in the future. Hope wherever you're watching, you're having a beautiful day. Until next time.